Hey there, friends. So I've been working on my new comic, and it's Outlaw's Apprentice. It's a fantasy thing. Hopefully, I'll be starting serializing that in January. And a lot of times when I'm working on a project like that, a longer project, I like to take breaks and do little hobby things to allow my mind to let story ideas percolate. When I get to the end of a scene and I'm not exactly sure how to start the next one, I'll go and do something with my hands, not at the drawing table. And right now, that is this thing. So this is sort of the start of a suit of kind of tree bark armor to kind of have like a sort of a Green Knight type of deal. So when this is all done, I'll go in and hit the edges with some green and a little bit of moss and make it, sort of pull that out a little bit. But to start, I'm just making it the wooden bark here. So I'm on the board of directors at our local makerspace, and I was teaching a class for teens on costume armor, and I did a little texture demo, and I thought, well, I like how that texture looks. I'm gonna do something like that for myself. So it's, it's got articulation and that kind of thing. And I figured I'd walk y'all through how I did it in case you want to do something similar or in case it spurs any ideas. So you will need craft foam, also called EVA foam, a hobby knife, a heat gun, a hot glue gun sticks, black spray paint, acrylic paint, a bristle brush, and matte spray polyurethane. So I get my craft foam from Michael's. I order it online because it's a lot cheaper than getting it in person at the store. And it's you can cut it with an X-Acto knife really easily, and you can shape it a little bit by hitting it with a heat gun. So this is open cell foam. Hitting it with heat gun kind of closes the cells and allows you to stretch it a little bit and lock it into place. And then, once you have it, it will kind of retain its shape. So once you're happy with that shape, you can go in, and I use the backside to carve in a little bit of a wood grain if it's going to be seen. So the backs of the areas that sort of flange out a little bit. Hitting it with an X-Acto knife after it's been hit with a heat gun makes those cuts a little more dimensional. And then you can go in with that heat gun. I use a high temperature heat gun here because it goes a lot faster, so it doesn't adhere as well to the foam as does the low temp, but you can kind of lock in your superstructure this way. And then you can go in with your low temp glue gun and do thinner, more detailed lines, and those kind of lock the glue to the foam. Once that's done, you hit it with a black matte spray paint, light coats to keep it from getting sticky. And then you can go in and start dry brushing the color over it. So using a bristle brush, I start with a burnt umber, which is a fairly dark brown. And I start, I get as much of that paint off as I can, and I start going over it and not trying to dig into the deep parts. I let those stay black, but just brushing side against it. Same way with this next color, which is brown oxide, which is a slightly lighter one. I try even less hard to cover the whole thing. You still get a general overcoat of the whole piece, but you try even less to dig in. And then once that's done, you use your lightest shade. In my case, this is territorial beige. And mostly you hit the corners and the edges and that sort of thing. And that just lets that light pop against the black there. Hit that whole thing with a spray matte polyurethane and you are done. Now, some questions you might have for this. Hot glue, isn't that going to melt if it gets hot? And, it's very possible. But right now it's about 85 degrees up in this part of the studio because I don't have central air up here. I only have a window unit that points directly at my drawing desk. And while that keeps me alive over there, over here, it's pretty warm. These have been sitting here for a while. They've been piled up. It hadn't created any issues. I wouldn't leave them in a hot car, but I assume it'll be fine for wearing around and that sort of thing. Coating it, painting it, coating it seems to lessen the ability of the glue to react the way that it might otherwise react. Some other things, like this part here, you've got the sections that in an actual suit of armor would have mail or something along those lines. I'm going to try doing the same thing with some sleeves underneath here in the armpit. They have black glue sticks, so I'm gonna run a few of those just on these edges, do a couple tests, make sure they bend fine, paint them up, and then have that so that it will all look the same. Same for my fingers. I'll probably paint them green, bottom of this, you know, add some moss to the base of the glove. I want to still be able to pick stuff up. But, you know, it moves around. It's going to be pretty neat, I think, when it's all done. And you could do other things using this kind of thing. You know, this also could be, you know, human muscle. It could be lava. It could be a lot of stuff. You know, it just depends on how you paint it. But, you know, these sort of striations, you can do some neat stuff with them. So anyway, it also allows it to be a little more rigid without being so rigid that it's going to bend or crack if you move it beyond what the joint actually permits. So it's a little more rigid than regular foam is going to be, but less rigid than resin or something along those lines. Oh, I suspect that folks are going to ask if I have a pattern for these that I can share, and I'm afraid that I don't. I'm making this up as I go along. You know, I have a glove, I trace my hand, add knuckle here, knuckle here, knuckle here, knuckle here. I cut them as I go. Same with the back of the hand. I see there's an open spot. I add a little piece. I see that this part needs to bend. I add a little piece. So I don't have a pattern. I just look at how armor works. I've drawn a lot of armor in museums. I've tried to make stuff, you know. So if you are wanting a pattern, I'm not the guy to talk to, but you can find patterns for armor, I assume, and apply this textural process to them. Anyway, I hope that spurs some imagination in you for projects that you can do. Oh, and don't forget to keep your eyes open for Outlaw's Apprentice, which is my comic, which is unrelated to the building of armor, but there's armor in it. And if you like this sort of thing, you can pick up my most recent art book, A Dream of Swords, which collects 130 sword drawings that I did at museums that I visited around the world. Thanks for watching.